Henry Ford is quoted as saying, "Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is a success." Let's talk about teamwork and collaboration on today's episode of the Playing with Purpose podcast. All right, welcome to the Playing with a Purpose podcast, where we explore topics related to the moral development of collegiate athletes and young people as it relates to character, responsibility, and purpose. I'm your host, Matt Barker, and today I'm excited to have Freed-Hardeman University head men's basketball coach, Drew Stutts, with me on today's program. Coach, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Glad to be here.
You know what, I think after saying that, I should probably rephrase that and say, head coach of the defending national champion Freed-Hardeman men's basketball team. I know you might not like me saying that, but that's something to be proud of. Obviously, the first men's basketball national championship, so something to be proud of and a great accomplishment for sure.
Yeah, I don't mind you saying it. That'll be fine. We had a great season last year and in the middle of a good season this year, but yeah, you can say that anytime you like.
Yeah. All right. So before I have a few other questions we'll get into, I always like to do a fast favorite segment with Drew Stutts. All right, Coach, favorite color?
I'll go with blue. Blue. I've always been a fan of blue. Auburn Tigers.
Okay.
A lot of people, a lot of teams I grew up with blue.
Yeah. Okay. My wife would not agree with that one, but that's okay. Everybody is to each their own, I guess, right? All right. So I'm an Indiana guy, so I have no dog in the fight. Number 2, go-to comfort food. This doesn't have to be good food that's good for you. It's just whatever you like to eat.
Yeah. I mean, I like cookies. Cookies are fine. They're usually not in our home because if there are cookies there, then one of my boys have probably eaten them. Roman has a way of finding the snacks and going through them in a hurry. That's my 11-year-old at home.
There you go. Yeah. All right. What about favorite song to blast in the car?
Man, I listen to everything, all kinds of genres of music. I'm on a little bit of a Jelly Roll kick right now.
There you go.
So Jelly Roll's new album is really good if you haven't listened to it.
Jelly Roll. All right. Favorite place to visit within the Mid-South Conference? This is the conference Freed-Hardeman's in. Where's your favorite place to go? The city.
I'm going to go with a court, and I'm going to say Georgetown. They just got a hot gym.
Tough place to play.
It's small. It's tough. You're in your locker room's in the basement. You know, it's just one of those rough places to go to, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl for sure.
Coaches are all probably night owls.
Night owl. Morning is just by necessity.
Yeah. Favorite holiday?
I'll go with Christmas. Enjoy it. Usually some time away from ball at the time. A lot of time with family, so I'll go with Christmas.
All right. Favorite hobby when you're not working?
If it's something leisure, probably golf. Now I say that, and I've probably played 6 or 8 rounds of golf in the last 2 years. But I enjoy working around the house and just little home projects and things around the house. So,
all right. Favorite TV show or movie? Too busy scouting other teams to watch TV shows.
No, I mean, I watch some TV. That's usually how I wind down at night. If I would just say a movie, I really enjoy Moneyball with Brad Pitt.
That's a good one.
From a coaching standpoint, it's fun to watch, and it's a funny but also good sports movie.
Yeah. Favorite sports team? This can be any sport.
Well, I said Auburn earlier. I guess I can say Auburn right now as well. Football's, I guess, the biggest passion there as far as why I pull for Auburn. But, I mean, they are number one in the nation.
Number one in the nation.
Basketball, I'll say Auburn.
They got my coach, Bruce Pearl, that's from University of Southern Indiana, my hometown.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay, you already mentioned this one, I think. Favorite snack, cookies? Is that what it is? Got another?
If I just said snack, I would say maybe a Reese's. Maybe I would change it up. Reese's is my favorite dessert, so we'll throw Reese's in there as well.
All right, everybody knows Drew Stutts a little bit better now from our Fast Favorite segment. So let's get back to talking about today's topic, teamwork and collaboration. We've already touched on this a little bit, but so I've known you for quite a while. You started at Freed-Hardeman as an assistant coach under Jim Sanderson and was there a couple years, went to Chester County for a year and came back, and you've been entering your 6th season. So this is the 6th season at Freed-Hardeman. If the record I looked up online, 128-47, so great record. Obviously, the last few years have had some really good seasons leading up to last year where we won the national championship, but consistently have had some great seasons. I know you a little bit better probably than some of our listeners do, so if you want to give us a little bit of background about some prior coaching experience, some work experience that you have leading up to where you are today.
Yeah, I don't know that my story is really that interesting, but yeah, I mean, I've known from an early age that I wanted to either teach and or coach. I think back in like seventh grade, I had a high school, middle school history teacher. His name was Craig Canaday, who made a really big impact on my life. Not because he was really trying to, just because he was really passionate about what he was doing, and he was my middle school basketball coach, my American history teacher, and just did an incredible job. And I remember him in that class just talking about, like, if you find something that you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I know people have heard that before, but I've always enjoyed sports. I've always enjoyed being part of a team and a challenge. And I played baseball and basketball growing up. Was probably a little bit better baseball player than I was a basketball player, but just loved basketball. That's back when Michael Jordan was in his
Right.
prime,
Yeah.
and just a lot of energy around the sport at that time. And so just pursued basketball. Had an opportunity to play a couple years of college basketball. Didn't really do anything in my college career much. Redshirted a year at University of North Alabama. Went to a local junior college there, and played a handful of minutes here or there. But then hopped right into coaching. So finished my education at University of North Alabama. Was a PE major, and coached there at a local high school that I graduated from, Mars Hill Bible School.
Hmm.
Had a chance to coach with Mike Mitchell, who was just an incredible leader and mentor and great basketball coach there at Mars Hill. He didn't win all of his state championships at Mars Hill, but in total, I think he won 9 state championships in his
Wow.
career. And just being able to sit back and learn from him, but also at the time I was coaching a seventh grade boys team, an eighth grade boys team, as well as doing those things, assisting him with the varsity team. So there was about 4.5 hours of practice every day.
Yeah.
Some of those I was leading, and some of those I was observing and just helping as an assistant. But some of that experience, as well as my experience with Jay Mitchell, who was the boys baseball coach,
Yeah.
he's had great success, won 3 or 4 state championships as well. So it was just a great way for me to be getting an education. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to coach. I had a little bit of playing experience, but was able to kind of lead as a head coach, but also be an assistant. During that time, we started the football program at Mars Hill. We had no idea what we were doing,
Yeah.
but that was fun as well, just kind of taking a program from absolutely nothing and creating a football team. It takes 11 guys to play football, and I think we had like 16 or 17 on our team. There were some challenges that came along with that, but
Right.
all those experiences early on, I'm early 20s, mid 20s at the time, really just gave me an opportunity to learn so much about coaching, about leading, about myself, about how to, reach people in different places with different
Mm.
personalities. I knew a lot about the game, both baseball and basketball, but, at the time you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't realize how much I had to learn early in my career. And so one thing led to another. I moved to Birmingham, started coaching and teaching there full time as a middle school basketball coach. Same thing. I did, when you're young, they want you to coach everything. So I
Right.
was coaching golf and football and basketball, but I was doing all that stuff, mowing the fields and doing all the dirty work, which really makes you, appreciate those things now when so many of those things are getting done behind the scenes that you don't have to worry about. I had a chance to coach at corner, and then one thing led to another. I made a stop at Hewitt-Trussville High School for a couple years. It's where I met Coach Sanderson,
Hmm.
which was good as well. I mean, another opportunity to learn how
Yeah.
to lead and in a different way, where you're working with, different coaches and figuring out how to support them and help them and grow programs. We did a really good job of growing a program. We built a softball field the 2 years that I was there on campus. So just a lot of opportunities at lower levels to learn how to lead. Some of that was definitely through failure, not just success.
Right.
But one thing led to another, and decided to make the move here, 7-8 years ago to become an assistant. Just the opportunity that I felt like God had put in front of me, and a rare opportunity to be at a Christian school to coach collegiate sports I played a couple years of collegiate sports and really did not have good experiences there as far as maybe the character, the environment, the culture that I was in. And, I'd always grown up thinking I'm going to be a college coach. I'm going to be a college coach. And then after experiencing it for a couple years, I was like, I really think high school probably fits me a little bit better. But one thing led to another, had an opportunity to be here. And then, like you said, bounced over to Chester County for a year. And then, just right place, right time, given the opportunity for no reason. I had 1 year of high school head coaching at the time, 1 year of assistant college coaching, and, Coach McCutcheon, the athletic director at the time, chooses to give me this opportunity. I'm glad to be here and really proud of the success and what we've built over the last, 6 years. You use the word consistent, and that was really important to me. Coming into it, I wanted to create a great culture, one where guys could compete at the highest of levels, but at the same time not sacrifice character, not sacrifice things that a lot of college coaches sacrifice things for wins, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to create a great culture where we could compete and that we were going to be consistent and we were just going to keep showing up, and whatever that turned out to be. If that turned out to be a berth into the national tournament, that would be great. If it turned out to be a conference championship, that would be great. But the intention was to really focus on our culture, develop something special, and we would just see kind of where it went from there.
And one of the things you mentioned, a couple of things I wanted to ask you about too, and it kind of led right into that. So with the experience you had with prior mentors and coaches that you learned from, one thing that's always been interesting to me, I know your family pretty well just from coming to the games. They're very vocal a lot of times at the games, and I enjoy it. I enjoy hearing them give their feedback, whatever that is. You seem real calm to me on the sidelines, and I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, but you probably don't feel calm on the inside when you're in the middle of a game. But as far as the way that you communicate with the officials, the way that you talk with your players, there's obviously times where there's heat of the moment, you might be yelling or something like that. But overall, the general consensus I get is very calm. Usually you get more from the officials if you're calm instead of just yelling at them. So is that something that you learned from some prior coaches that you saw, or is that just kind of the way your personality is in general?
I think it's a combination, but it's probably more just my personality in general. You learn good and bad from different people along the way. And like you said, I think that badgering of officials and that loud, so many coaches, and this isn't a fault. There's a lot of coaches that do this and have had a lot of success. You look at Dan Hurley right now, who is extremely loud and extremely aggressive and won back-to-back, national championships at Division I level. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but I just think it fits me to be myself. Early on, everybody's got self-doubt and you're unsure if you're doing things right and the best way that they can be done. But the longer I've been doing it, I think the more confident I become in just being who I am and not trying to be somebody that I'm not. Even from coaching 7th grade boys at Mars Hill, what you're saying now is what they were saying then. Like, man, you seem so calm in such a stressful environment.
Calmer than I am doing the public address announcing. I get all worked up, and I'm like, I don't know how he's staying so calm over there.
Well, it's easier for me when I'm in charge. When I'm watching a game that I'm invested in some way, whether it's one of Abby's games that
right.
She's 10 years younger than me, so I watched her play a lot of games. So I'm probably more worked up and nervous in those situations than I am when I'm coaching. But it just kind of feels like, for me, it just comes natural, and it just feels like I'm in the right place. I know the work that our team has put into the game, and I know the work that I've put in and my staff has put in. And so, you want to get to a point where you're okay with the outcome. You may be disappointed in the outcome of the game, but you're okay with it. You know that you've done everything that you can do to maximize the potential of your team and to set your team up for success. And I think that brings a calmness and a stillness to you at times where you know that you're doing the right things and you're giving your team the best chance that they can have to win the game. So
thinking about your staff, you have Grant Burns, who's been with you for pretty much the whole time you've been head coach, I believe, all 6 years. I notice a lot in post-game conferences and things, you talk about this was a team win, not only the players, but We did a great job scouting, giving Grant some credit. And I think that sometimes translates to your players as well. It's not just me. This is a team mentality. Grant scouting the team, our scout team, the ones that you might not see on the court, getting them ready for the next game. So talk about Grant a little bit and the experience you've had with him. And is that a conscious effort or just kind of naturally want to give credit where credit is due?
A little bit of both, to be honest with you. Just talking about teamwork, obviously Grant's a young guy. I think he's 25, 26 years old, but has had a great experience here. Started a little bit green early in his career, just like, we all do. But over the years has really become, excellent in what he does. Probably his biggest responsibility is scouting, getting to know the other team from an individual personnel standpoint, from a team standpoint as far as what they do offensively. And then he prepares that scout team in practice or outside of practice to, run the things that they run in games. And, he's doing an incredible job. And I think the fact that we've been together for so long now, we both know what we're doing and what we're looking for
right.
and how it works. And, there was some failure involved in that early on as far as just, him figuring out what I wanted and how to, communicate that and put that in place in practice. But Grant's doing a great job. That is a conscious effort for me to mention him and mention the scout team. Part of, when you think about building a program and valuing the team and valuing everybody that's in your program, I think one of the advantages I have is that, when I look down the bench or I look within our program, every single person I can relate to where they're at. Whether it's a redshirt who hasn't subbed in a single game, whether it's a guy that's running scout team, whether it's a guy that's a student assistant that's responsible for washing jerseys and hanging them up in lockers and having things prepared for us on the road and picking up food. And there's so many things that go into creating a great program. And for me, I talked about my college experience a little bit. I didn't really have a great college experience as far as having success and really enjoying it. But I do think those 2 years that I played college basketball really helped prepare me to lead a program because I kind of learned what it felt like to be at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
To be that guy that never gets credit, that never gets mentioned, but is putting in a lot of work. And there's guys that are on our bench that are really good players, great people that show up, and I'm not just saying this, that show up every single day that bring energy and effort and the right spirit and the right attitude to our team, whether it be in the weight room, whether it be in practice, whether it be scout team. Maybe you're not even on scout team. Maybe you're just a guy on the side that day, but they're bringing energy, and energy is contagious. And, throughout the year, I do try to be really intentional about remembering and recognizing those guys in front of the entire team and say, hey, these guys are bringing value to our team, and at times, it's hard because sometimes those guys, I think, forget maybe the value that they do bring to our team. And
right.
It's like, well, I can just kind of be here. I'm not playing. And you got to remind them,
Yeah.
you got to remind
them. A little bit
them,
of accountability for them as well. Yeah,
absolutely. You're bringing something. Everybody's bringing something, and you can choose to elevate us, or you can choose to stand over there and not be a part. And, people that come to the games, I'm sure they are entertained by our bench. If you just watch our bench,
they're hilarious.
They have a ton of fun, and that's intentional. That's intentional. I want those guys to bring energy to, they chirp at the other team a little bit at times, which is
both teams do that.
They do that. I was watching the game from last week, and we had a particular situation with a player. Things just weren't going well for him that day. And I went back, and as I was watching, all I was doing was just watching the bench. And I saw 2 or 3 players, none of which played in the game. They came over to this individual who was having a rough game, and just a simple handshake, pat on the back.
Yep.
They didn't say anything to him, but those things are so valuable. Those things are so valuable because this team, as well as a lot of the teams that we've had in the past, they truly care about each other. They know the value that every person in our program brings. So, it's a team effort.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about that's more recent within the past 3 or 4 years even is the changing dynamic of teams as far as recruiting, as far as each year maybe losing players, transferring out with the especially, different levels, NCAA level, with the transfer portal, NIL deals, all these different things that are maybe luring players away from certain teams to go to other teams. How has that dynamic changed for you, maybe as a coach, in trying to get people to buy in, like we talked about culture, but also how is teamwork maybe challenged as a result of all this changing dynamic?
Well, fortunately for us, up until this past year, there really was very little shifting amongst our program. So just talking about our program, I think the years previous to this last one, I don't think we had a player transfer out to go to another team in like 4 years. And that was something I was really proud of. We had some guys that had opportunities to leave and go somewhere else, but chose to stay. And I think the culture that we had built here, as well as the university here, was one of the reasons that they chose to stay. But, this past season was really the first time that this challenge was right here in our face. And, we had two guys, J.J. Wheat and Jaquan Lax, both who had an opportunity to move up and play at the Division I level, NIL, making some money. And super excited for those guys.
Yeah.
There's going to come a point for sure where our program potentially will have to shift in some ways and basically just pivot and figure out how to continue to build a great culture here. But also, you can't ever fault an individual for wanting to improve their situation, whether that be financially or the level that they're playing. And so you want to have this nice balance of wanting to improve as an individual, but also continue to work to become the best team that you can be. Basketball is very much a team chemistry sport.
Yeah.
It's a lot of chemistry that goes into basketball on both ends of the sport. It's different than football. It's different than baseball. I know football is obviously a team sport, but you kind of have your little teams amongst the teams. You
special teams,
your receivers,
defense,
your quarterback. But with basketball, it's very much there's this flow to the game, and all five guys, especially the way we defend, have really got to be connected. And so it's a different challenge in basketball in some ways, but boy, it's so much different. I mean, sports have changed in the last 10 years in such a just a dramatic way, and it's changing the mindset of even guys that are, freshmen, sophomore, juniors in high school. There's so much information out there about the money that you can make at the Division I level.
Right. Question, though, that kind of stems from that is building trust within a team with this ever-changing dynamic where you have maybe different players. As you mentioned, we haven't had to deal with that maybe as much as some programs have, but we have new players coming in, trying to build that trust maybe in a shorter amount of time. You have a limited amount of time before the season gets started. How do you build that trust with the players that are already there, with new players coming in? How do you build that culture and trust within a team?
Yeah. Well, I think, first off, it starts with my relationship with the individual. And I think, obviously, this sounds so simple, but I think a lot of coaches miss this. Like, it starts when you're recruiting the kid. It starts, whether it's a transfer. We've got two guys on our team this year that came in with 1 year left to play, and then we got quite a few guys that were freshmen that came in this year. But it starts with honesty in recruiting. It starts with describing what your program looks like, what your expectations are for everyone. And our philosophy has kind of been like, hey, this is who we are. These are the expectations. This is what things are going to look like for you if you choose to come here. These are the things that you're going to be accountable for. Here's how we're going to help develop you as well as everybody else within our program. I think a lot of coaches do that in reverse, where they recruit the individual and they tell, Joe how good he is at this. And so they build up this selfishness to begin at the beginning of the process. It's all about them, and how good they are individually. And then they come in here, and then you flip the script on them. You say, all right, let's come together.
In a way, you're kind of almost deceiving the player in that way, where
100%.
you're, and one of the things that Jonathan Estes talked about on our previous podcast was honesty within players. these players are in front of you right now. If you work hard, you might be able to get, maybe into the lineup. Being honest in the forefront, and he mentioned a quote from John Wooden. If you say something to a player, they might be mad at you for 3 days, but if you do something, they'll be mad at you for a lifetime.
Sure.
Without being honest with them. And I think that's true with not only with recruiting but also expectations on the court, like you were talking about, that teamwork mentality, being honest and letting them know what the culture is that we're working for here, whether it be at Freed-Hardeman or whatever school you're at. But I think honesty definitely is one of the things when I was kind of looking up how do you build trust with not just athletes, but also whether you're a teacher, whatever job you're in, it's being honest with people.
Sure.
What about conflict? We're thinking about conflict. Every team, this is probably displayed a little bit more when teams are not doing well. You see a little bit more conflict, maybe a little bit of trying to figure out what's going on. But conflict within a team is inevitable at any point throughout the season or off season. How do you approach resolving maybe disagreements or misunderstandings in a way that builds up the team and maybe doesn't cause it to crumble?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you really got to take time to get to know the individuals. You've got to be aware as a coach and spend time with them outside of just on the court, so you can kind of get to know the dynamic of your team and figure out who your leaders are and how to reach different people. They all cannot be reached the exact same way. Certain people need to be really pushed. Other people need a little love. Certain people need to be called out in front of the group. Other people you just need to call into your office and have a conversation or hold them after practice. And so I think it begins with just your relationship with the individual. And again, I mean, it sounds very simple, but having built up a lot of equity in that relationship and a lot of trust within that relationship, when there is conflict, and, it helps that we've had some success here, when you have some success, they tend to believe you. They tend to buy in a little bit more, and you can reference maybe some past experiences where guys have been in a similar situation and how this worked really well for them or this didn't work very well. But, it takes some, I guess, just emotional intelligence and understanding the dynamics of a group and who your leaders are and how to handle people. But, to sum a lot of that up, again, I mean, it goes back to having that real, genuine relationship with your players and spending time with them and getting to know just who they are and what makes them tick. And, there's certain things that are going to make guys tick that you can easily go to, and then there's certain things that aren't. And so just knowing your guys, and you got to spend time with them and care about who they are.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to take time to really genuinely care about who they are and who they're becoming along the way to be able to quickly resolve those issues.
How do you maintain morale maybe during difficult times? This season we've done pretty well, lost a couple games, but overall I'd say probably you're happy with where we're at. There's always room for improvement with any team, but difficult times in the season, maybe it's going to a place like Georgetown where there's a lot of, the court is very difficult to play. You talked about how important the bench is, the morale that they have, the energy they bring to the team. How do you help maintain that morale throughout a long season where you have probably one of the toughest conference schedules in the nation, Mid-South Conference, very tough? How do you maintain that morale with not only the players that are in the game, but also those on the bench?
Boy, it's hard. You and I were talking a little bit before we got on air here, and, you focus on the process, and it really just comes down to you being the best that you can be every single day, which sounds so simple, but it's so hard to do. And you talk about, we in the preseason, we talk about having a microscope and a telescope. It's a John Gordon reference there where, you're looking at, hey, this is where we want to get to in mid-March and late March. That's what we're shooting for. That's where we want to go as a team. Maybe it's different for an individual. That's where I want to go as an individual, okay? And then you kind of come back in and you focus in on, all right, what does that look like today? Because a lot of today's equal tomorrow. I mean, again, it can't be more simple than showing up and being your absolute best every single day. So you kind of always go back and forth, but you understand that it's a process and it's a grind. And sometimes, I mean, I tell you what, like sometimes just recognizing how hard it is, but knowing that you want to be different and that you want to be as an individual, you want to be a champion. As a team, you want to be a champion, and how unnatural it is for us as humans to do more than average.
Yeah.
But guys like that challenge.
Yeah.
Guys like that challenge. When you talk about the word different and you recognize that, hey, showing up today for a shoot around at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning when you got in late last night, this is what we love.
Yeah.
Like, this is what makes us special.
Yeah.
We're here. It's 8 o'clock. We're about to be in a full sweat at Georgetown. It's 110 degrees in the gym.
On purpose, probably.
And we love it.
Yeah.
You gotta love, you gotta embrace that hard stuff. You can't dodge it. You gotta recognize it, and you gotta say, hey, today it will be an easy day for us to just get by, for us to just do the bare minimum. But that's not what we're about. That's not what you're about. That's not what we want. That's not what we signed up for. That's not what we agreed to. And so it's just this back and forth, because honestly, I mean, the big games are easy to get up for. It's the games that you're playing good teams that maybe are unranked in the Mid-South. So those are the games that are most challenging for coaches and for players, because it's like, you got to show up. And like you mentioned, I mean, we're having a good year. And so, with us, being a top 5 team, reigning national champs, you've always got that target on your back. But morale is just understanding that there's only one way that we do things, and holding them to that standard and reminding them why the standard is what it is.
Yeah. Talking about the process, has that changed any with the success we had last year as far as the process goes, with maybe having some success from previous seasons? Is the process a little bit different now, or do you try to stay within that same things we were doing last year, or is there a little bit of difference with having that success?
Well, every team's a little different. Last year we had a lot of guys that were returning, probably as far as guys that were playing, probably 80-90% of our team was back from the previous year. But to answer the specific question, I think the standard just goes up. It's not that the process looks any different. You just got to understand the standard is the standard. And every year that literally, if you go back and you track our program for the last 5-6 years, every year we've taken a step forward. We've taken a step forward. First year winning season, second year, got to a certain level. Third year, make the tournament. Next year, win a couple games, and it's just been a steady progression. And some of that's been on me, as far as me raising that standard. And sometimes as a coach, you got to be realistic about where you're at in the process. You can't go from the bottom floor to the top floor in a year, and if you do that, there's a great chance that what you accomplish that year is not going to be sustainable. And fortunately for us, we've taken the stairs, not the elevator, and it's just been one of those floor number 1, floor number 2, floor number 3. And so we've built something that I think is sustainable, but it's been a process. And really, as far as just the consistency of it, I mean, the standard's the standard. This is just the way we do things, and that coming in. So don't expect anything different.
Right. So I'm a communication guy, so I love talking about communication, teach communication classes here at Freed-Hardeman. But speaking about the process, the culture, the mission, the values of a team, speaking about communication, how much of that is an important role as a coach, as a team, to actually voice those things, communicate those things to the players? We talked about in recruiting, this is something that you talk about early on, but even when you have all the players together, how much conversations are taking place? This is what we're about. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to act when we're on the road, when we're at home. This is how we need to carry ourselves. This is how we need to be a better teammate. All those kinds of things. How much of that is, as a coaching staff, is communicated to your players and within each other on the team?
Man, it's probably the most important thing. To be honest with you, it's probably the most important thing. And again, it starts in that recruiting process. And I can't overstate that. I know I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times, but that's really where you're setting the stage. You're letting them know. And I'll be honest with you, we've missed out on a lot of really good players that their talent could have helped us go to a higher level. But when you're honest with people and you set that stage and you communicate those standards early on, certain people just decide that's not for me.
Right.
I don't fit into what you're projecting. I don't fit into the culture that you've created there, and it's not for everybody. There's got to be some selflessness when you join our team. But as far as just the importance of communication, I mean, it can't be overstated how important that is. And I think it's an everyday thing. We've got certain things within our program that are communicated in the recruiting process, and then certain things that once our team starts getting together that we reiterate. We hit on those things we've already talked about. We talk together about them together as a team. We talk about how those certain standards, we've got 5 core values: hardworking, unselfish, tough, accountable, and joy. Those are our 5 words. We define what each of those are early in the season. We talk about what that looks like in our day-to-day lives as students, as teammates, as friends, as teammates, as player-coach relationship, as player-to-player relationship. Give examples of how to hold someone accountable in the right way. There's a lot of teaching and a lot of groundwork that's laid before you ever get to those points of conflict. You mentioned conflict. Like, I think a lot of things can be avoided if you've put enough thought and time and intentionality, is that a word? Being very intentional about, hey, this is how things are going to be. Not being reactive, obviously being proactive, where you already have communicated, hey, this is how we're going to do things. This is how we're going to handle these situations. So, communication, as far as how it pertains to coaching, is extremely valuable, and life in general. As you know, being a communications major right now, a communications teacher right now with these students, it's not something that really comes natural to a lot of kids that are, 18, 22, 23 years old. So much of that now is done behind a screen and not face-to-face verbally.
Right.
And that's one thing I love about sports. Anybody that's playing college athletics, in my opinion, or high school athletics for that matter, the value that you get from being part of a team and working through conflict and being held to standards and having to, communicate through the good, through the bad. I just think those kids right now have such a head start on life, and that's not, take a shot at anybody else that's not playing. I'm just saying
it just gives them a lot of experience handling a lot of situations that other people might not have. Yeah.
Athletics is great right now.
Yeah. One of the things you talked about with teams, every team is different. Every sports team is different. Basketball is different than baseball. You have a lot of unique perspectives on every team, a lot of diverse perspectives, a lot of people from different states, different countries. A lot of times, we're thinking about communication. That can be difficult to communicate. You mentioned earlier about every player has a different personality. You have to handle how you instruct them, how you correct them, whatever it is, in different ways. How does having diverse perspectives shape a team, but also how do you kind of make sure that everybody is able to, their voice is heard and that everybody's on the same page, even though everybody's from different backgrounds?
Yeah, and that was one of my biggest concerns the year I came in as an assistant coach. Was just like, I'd played a couple years of college ball, but really didn't have a lot of experience. That particular year, I think we had 3 or 4 international players. We had players from different parts of the country, and I was like, are these guys going to listen to me? Am I going to be able to reach them? We had a kid from the Bahamas, kid from, we had all these guys from so many different places, and that was really a great year. And the thing I took away from that year, having had so many, we had people here from Chester County, we had Simon Francis on that team, we had Ehab, we had Jamil Watt. I can remember all these different guys and all these different personalities.
Is that the Dotsenko was from Russia too?
Was Russia. So, we've had so many different guys, and I remember, honestly, I was a little intimidated. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure this out, But what I took away from that year, and I learned it pretty quickly, was like, people are just people. Wherever you're from, we all want the same things. We all have the same fears. We all have the same feelings. We may communicate them a little differently in, some people being a little louder or quieter or, being very verbal or not. But really, we're all the same in so many, in every way, in every way. We all have the same things. Our experience and past may be a little different, but everybody's here for the same reason. And so as far as our team in particular, that's one of the things I talk about with guys early on is like we've got people from so many different backgrounds, but I try to recruit high-character people only. And high-character people may be from another country. They may be from a single-family home. They may come from a Christian background, a non-Christian background. But character's character, and people that are good people And it's crazy to me how when you focus on those things and do those things, how quickly a team can come together.
Yeah.
When you've got when you describe the culture that you're going to be stepping into and what's going to be expected of them and all those things that we've already mentioned a couple times in the podcast here, but like when they get here, even guys that are from different parts of the country or different parts of the world, there's two things that we talk about and specific to this, and that would be trust and respect.
Right.
The foundation of every relationship is built on those two things. Can I trust you and do I respect you? If I don't trust you or I don't respect you, we're going to have problems.
Yeah, and both of those things are earned. That comes with time. It's not something that you always have right away. And, that's something, again, you have to build that within your players, within the team culture as well. That's just with any relationship requires a little bit of time to build that. Yeah. Do you have any personal story you can think of, or maybe it's just a certain team that you've coached where teamwork made a big difference in achieving a goal, or maybe overcoming some tough time that you had to go through? That might be a tough question to narrow down one specific thing, but is there anything that comes to mind for that?
I kind of think back to the team that would have been 2 years ago when we went to the Sweet 16. It was the first time, we hosted the national tournament that year and won some games. Went to Kansas City that year, lost in the Sweet 16 to Grace that year. But that was a really big year for me as a coach. For so long, I had heard and had a little bit of experience with a lot of the things that we're talking about today, as far as building a culture and recruiting high character guys and all those things, But that was the year that I really didn't think we were just super talented. We were really young. That's not a shot to the guys that were on that team. We just weren't the most talented, but we were a really together group. And, Grant was young at the time. Clark Gandy, who you mentioned earlier, he was young. And so when we got back, I can't remember if we were back in the office, but I remember the conversation, and I asked both of them, I was like, what do we take away from this season? Like, what is it that we can really just learn from the success that we had this year? Because we won the Mid-South Conference that year. We came back from 19 down, beat Georgetown in the conference championship.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many of these things that we just found a way. And Grant, who traditionally is a very talent-driven guy, he wants talented players.
Right.
Like, that was the young Grant, where he was like, he wanted the most talented guys. And
Yeah.
I remember him talking about how you don't have to have the most talent, but boy, if you're together and you have a great culture, you can really accomplish a lot. And I think, it always eats away at coaches. You just think, man, if you can just get that one guy that's just a little bit better, but do you keep the togetherness? Do you keep that connectivity? Are you staying true to your culture? And so really for me, just when it came down to teamwork, that team was filled with guys that had been here for a long time. Some of those guys weren't playing, but Logan Bonds, Dawson Bailey, Zach Bauer, Quan and JJ were young that year. Hunter Skurlock.
Skurlock, who was at Freed-Hardeman for 12 years.
Forever.
Yeah. I loved watching him play, though.
Riley was here. I mean, just so many guys that were on that team. I think Brandon Thomas was our only transfer on that team, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and he was here for 1 year, I believe.
He was a grad for 1 year. And so we just had a group that was just – they loved each other. I mean, trips were so much fun. Bus rides were so much fun. They just had such a good time together. And it was just that moment of like clarity for me, where it was like, this is real. It's not just something that you're talking about. It's not just coach talk and, somebody trying to sound smart. Like, what we've got is special. And this has been, validation that, hey, we can do it this way and have a lot of success.
Yeah. Well, Coach, it's really, really been a pleasure having you on. I know this is in the middle of the season. I didn't know if I was going to get you to come in here I know you got a game tomorrow even. So I really appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate your team. I've had a lot of them in class and very respectful players. And, and I know that's probably true for a lot of the other classes they're in as well. And really appreciate you coming on. Teamwork and collaboration. When I think about teamwork, I think about some of the teams that I've seen you coach and just how together they are, as far as, you have two units that come in 5 at a time, and just knowing both of them picking up where the other one left off. And that's not something that comes naturally to players. A lot of times we talked about how players want to showcase how much they can do. And it's not always about how can we make the other players look better. And that's something I see with your teams. And that's why I wanted you to come on and and talk about some of the behind the scenes things of how you make that happen. And you touched on a lot of really good things. So I really appreciate you coming on today.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Matt. And I think this is great what you're doing. It's really needed today in college athletics specifically. And so I'm looking forward to following the podcast and sharing this because this is great.
Thanks for joining us this week. Special thanks to Drew Stutts for being my guest this week. Be sure to check out this episode and future episodes on Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also find the Playing with a Purpose podcast on the Ministry League Podcast Network and on the Freed-Hardeman University Athletics Champions of Character website at gofhulions.com/champions of character. Join us next week as we talk to Freed-Hardeman Dean of Student Life, Tony Allen, on community responsibility. And remember, winning isn't just about the scoreboard. It's about the character we build along the way. We'll see you next week on the Playing with a Purpose podcast.